Televangelist tonight. What's up, everybody? Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. And before we start, I forgot. Welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Rivera. Before we get started, we're going to start like we do every episode by summoning the spirit of Snoopy Bijou, the most unbothered little character in the world. I do miss my Snoopy Bijou. Sorry I had a little bit of trouble figuring out the live. I don't usually do lives, but what I wanted to tell you guys is I felt a little bit like a televangelist tonight, or I should say I feel a little bit like a televangelist tonight. This one is actually being done live. So for anybody that's wondering, I know a lot of times you guys are like, is this one pre-recorded or is this live? This one is very much live. We're just going to do what we do for about an hour. I know some of you have places to be and things to do. So if you have to go at any point, don't worry about it. I'm not going to be hurt. I'm not going to be like, hey, you left me. But no, I felt a little bit like a televangelist just because something told me to go live. So I don't know if there's an Agnes in the audience tonight that's having some ear pain. Send me $1,000 and I'll pray on it. But no, I don't know what it was, but something just told me that I should go live. And usually I will record them and then I go ahead and just put them up, and then I respond in the chat. I won't be able to actively do the chat right now. I can answer live on certain things. But if you guys have a chance and some extra money, go ahead and drop me a super thanks. That'll always get my attention right away. If you have a pressing question, a burning desire, as they used to say back in my old AA days. I don't know if you guys know that, but I went to AA for a year. It was court mandated at first. But then I decided, as an exercise, just to be sober for a year. And so when I decided to do my year of sobriety, it was an experiment, and I was just really trying to see if I had a drinking problem, because I had been really partying at that time, and they said, like, if you have a drinking problem, if you really do have a drinking problem, then you're not going to be able to do a year of sobriety. Like, it's going to be a lot more work or whatever. And so I just was like, okay, well, I'll go to AA just so I can be around other sober people, and have sober friends. And what I didn't like about AA was that once I stopped being sober, because my goal was literally to just do a year of sobriety. That's it. It wasn't like I wanted to be sober for the rest of my life. And I really didn't feel like I personally had a drinking problem. I know some people legit do. I'm not one of those people that's like, if you're if you go to AA, you're weak. Like, I saw something like that recently where they were saying, like, if you stop drinking or you can't control your drinking, you're weak or whatever like that. I don't feel like that at all. Different people have different chemical makeups, and whatever makes you you, makes you you. But if you notice that you are having a problem with something like that, whether it's drinking or anything else that people can get, hooked on, then definitely do things that you have to do and literally take the steps. And so I would never tell people not to do that, but just for me, especially once I started getting into it, where I was like, okay, well, I'm 6 months in or whatever, and I wasn't having any cravings or whatever. Every once in a while, just naturally, I'd feel like, oh, I'd like to go to that party and actually drink with everybody else, or I would like to join in the festivities, because I was doing comedy back then, and obviously, because this is probably like 10, 15, no, probably like 15 years ago. And so I was obviously younger 15 years ago. I was 15 years younger. And I remember thinking, like, I would like to party with my friends. But outside of that, it wasn't like an actual craving, and I definitely didn't feel anything physical. So then I was just like, yeah, I'm going to complete my year. And then once my year is done, I'll be done with this. And I made it to my year comfortably. And I know that this was partly for self preservation on their point or on their part, but at the same time, it really did bother me. And what bothered me was once I stopped being sober, none of my AA friends wanted to hang out with me or talk to me anymore. And it really was like that. It was not a good feeling because I really did like some of them, but they wouldn't even talk to me. Like they'd say hi, but they wouldn't chat with me at all when I would see them. And the AA meeting that I went to was at a place called Bliss Cafe. And the Bliss Cafe in Hollywood, I think it's gone now. I think the owner, Martin, sold it or shut it down. Whichever he did, they gentrified the building because I used to live upstairs from that building. It's called Villa Lane and it's pretty famous for its courtyard. It's right in Hollywood. It's on Fountain and Vine. And it was one of the places that I lived in. I lived in a studio by myself, and I probably lived there for about 9 months, and then I ended up getting, a place in like Hollywood, like what they call East Hollywood. Yeah, it's called East Hollywood. And it was Franklin and Beechwood. So if you drove straight up my street, which I was on Beechwood, then you would end up at the Hollywood sign, or that's how people would, get to the access to park and then walk up to the Hollywood sign. You can't drive up to the Hollywood sign, or you couldn't at the time. I don't know if anything's changed. I hear LA's like Thunderdome. But so yeah, so I used to go to that mic regularly, like, and they had the AA meetings all the time. And so obviously the people that I had gone to meetings with would see me there because they would finish the AA meeting right before the open mic. That was the other thing that made it convenient for me was, I was like, okay, I'm going to make it to my AA meeting. And then after my AA meeting, I'm going to go to the mic. And I would see them and they really wouldn't talk to me. Every once in a while they'd say a hey, and then eventually that disintegrated into like having no relationship with those people at all, which was kind of disappointing, but at the same time, I think that's why or a part of why I'm the type of person I am nowadays. And I feel better about it. I feel stronger for it. So it's not something that I'm going to complain about or act like has been particularly traumatic to me. Because, like, lately, and maybe, I don't know why I'm on right now. Like I said, I needed to record an Unbothered because I haven't done one in a week. I missed a week, and I was going to go without doing one this week, too, just because I've been busy and I've got editing to do after this. But something just, like I said, told me that I should be on right now. And so I was like, okay, well, I can do one in 15 minutes. I'll schedule one out. And so it was like obviously like 10 o'clock. And so I set this for 10:15. And but what happens with me is I really have no interest in being part of any group at all. So sometimes people will try to hit me with the, you know, you should be a little more active in LGBT, or you should use your platform to talk a bit more about LGBT issues and not so much the fun stuff that you talk about. And lately I have been talking about the more important stuff in the community. But the problem with that and what the LGBT community isn't going to like when it comes to a person like me talking about the LGBT community is I'll call out that a lot of it is fake. And I don't believe that a lot of the people I don't believe that a lot of people that pretend that they're really about certain causes are actually about those causes. And that's something that I've been talking about more recently Because you have these people that jump into these groups, and whether it be the turfs, because I've been spending a fair amount of time on X lately, the artist formerly known as Twitter, and whether it's the turfs or the LGBT or the gender critical, there are all these adults that, in my opinion, do not know how to function as individuals. So what they do is they join these toxic groups in these echo chambers on X, and then they harass and bully people. So at one point they came for me, and I know that they didn't realize it was the turfs that did it this time, but I know that they didn't realize that I'm so used to having people hate on me, and I'm very used to internet trolling. And I really do believe when people come for me, unless it's something that I just don't feel like responding to because I'm not in the mood that day. Yeah, this is live. For anybody that doesn't know, this is me actually live right now. If you want me to answer a question, drop a super thanks. That's the way it'll work best, but I will answer that I am live. But what I was trying to say is, they weren't ready for the way that I go into it, because when people, oh, and that's the other thing. If you do ask me a question at the end of me recording for an hour, because that's what I plan to do, I'll see if I can scroll back and answer your guys' questions. I just don't want to get caught up and have it not be like a good episode of the podcast because I'm scrolling through and answering questions. So, and like I said, if you can't drop a super thanks, I definitely understand that. I'm not judging you. I don't feel like that about anybody, and nobody owes me anything. But I will throw it out there, because sometimes when I throw it out there, people will throw it back. And throw it back can be taken the wrong way. But yeah, so they weren't ready for what I'll do, because like, if you guys have never seen, sometimes people get mad at me for doing this and they don't understand it. Like, that's what will bother me, is sometimes like my YouTube audience will go onto my ex and they'll be like, well, he's being a real a-hole today. And it's like, no, what you don't get is people decided to attack me on that particular day. And my regular strategy when people attack me is whatever you call me, I will live up to. So if you happen to think that your particular brand of victim is going to stop me in my tracks, it will not. Like, there was a point not too long ago when I got into it with the turfs. And I tried to stay nice because I really did have a point, and I really was trying to be helpful with what it is that people are saying the problem is when it comes to women's rights and women's rights versus trans rights. And so, no, I was not friends with Andrew Cunanan, but there was a rumor that I was friends with Andrew Cunanan, but I was not. I never met him, and if I did, I would have been partying, and I didn't meet him. I don't know him, but yeah, so I felt like I could be helpful in this, like, women's rights versus trans rights debate, and throw something out there that I thought would be helpful to both parties. And then it made a lot of people mad on the turf side. On the trans side, it didn't really get a reaction, but on the turf side, it really was crazy. And so I tried to be nice at first, and that lasted for a little while. And then I started getting annoyed because everybody would hit me with just this stupid stuff that I really didn't care about, where it was like, yeah, I didn't mean that to come off in any way other than helpful. And now I've got a bunch of people calling me misogynist when I hadn't even said anything misogynistic. I hadn't done that at all, but that's their card in that particular group, because every group has their card. Like, if you're dealing with the gays or the LGBT, obviously they're going to call you homophobic. Or if you're a person like me who's gay and they know they can't work the regular homophobic card, what they'll do instead is they'll call you self-hating and then they'll just keep trying to tell you that you're projecting, and it's because you hate yourself that you're not being nice to them, or you're not going along with whatever they're saying. And so, if it's the trans people or the trans activists, then it's usually going to be that you're transphobic. Like, that's the way that they go at it. If they're gender critical, then they're going to usually accuse you of being pro trans, or they're going to call you what's the word they like to call you? Uh, true transer. That's one of the things I've been called a lot lately, because I've been very honest, and I don't know how anybody got this confused. Like, this one I really do not get, because I've always been very open about the fact that I've had trans friends for the last 30 years. Trans people were some of the first people I met at the gay bars when I first started going out, and I was on a fake ID. So when you're a person like me that has been friends with trans people since before all of this was popular, like, now when people say that a lot of trans people are fake when they're talking about transgender, I 100% agree with that. And that's something I'm tired of too, because these people identify as transgender and then they make a bunch of problems for like original transsexual people, and then transsexual people are left kind of cleaning up the mess and like trying to make up for what it is that transsexual people, or for what it is that transgender people are out there saying, and the way transgender people are literally pissing people off. But what a lot of these people don't realize is, you're right, it is very popular right now. So there are a bunch of people that are identifying as trans that are not actually trans, that are not making any efforts to be convincing or passed in society, because trans is considered a card. Trans is considered an actual, like, feather in your cap. And so, an accomplishment, which I don't really know how, just by virtue of being trans without trying. Like, when I was coming up, if there was a beautiful trans woman, or a talented trans woman, or a beautiful, talented trans woman, then that was something that we would all be like, okay, she's doing it. That one right there is something special. But just because you said you're trans and you've done nothing to actually act on that, you've done nothing. You're not at all passable. You're not, and passable is really a low bar to set. And I don't mean to be mean, but it is a low bar to set if you think about it. Like, you don't even have to be beautiful. You just have to pass. So if you're just, and I don't think everybody has to pass. And I know I've had enough trans friends that I know some people, no matter what they do, are never going to pass. Like, I had one friend back in the day. I haven't seen her in years and years and years. One day I'm going to talk about her because she had an Eddie Murphy story. Which, if you guys don't know about Eddie Murphy, I'm going to make a full video about him. But Eddie Murphy has a history with the trans community and the trans girls, if you know what I'm getting at. And my friend was an absolutely beautiful trans woman. Her name was Sybil. She lived in Vegas. And if Sybil stumbles on this somehow, I don't know if she's still around, if she's still alive. I don't know anything about a lot of the girls. And life gets kind of crazy in that world. So I wish her well. I hope she's still alive. But my point is, Sybil was very, very beautiful. Looked like a showgirl, glamorous like that. But she wore flats all the time. Which, I'm not clowning her about wearing flats. Let me finish, you guys. People love to call me misogynistic. I know you guys are going to be like, you think a woman has to wear heels? No, I don't think anybody has to wear heels. Do I think some people should wear heels? Yeah, I kind of do. Some people should wear heels. But anyway, so she wore flats, right? And she was like 6'3", 6'4". It's very, very unlikely, or rare. I'm not going to say unlikely, but it's rare that you meet a woman that is 6'3", 6'4", without any kind of shoe, with just a flat. And sometimes she would even wear the ballet type shoes just to really make sure she got like no height from her shoes. And sometimes she would wear heels. And like I said, she was really beautiful. I mean, like, as far as her face, and then she did have her boobs done, and, like, you know, she had some work done in her hips as well. And so she had a nice shape, and especially for her height, because, you know, when you're that tall, whether you're male or female, whether you're genetic or trans, you're always going to have trouble being even at that height. Like, we all know, even just regular men that identify as men, a lot of times when they get that tall, like 6'3", 6'4", they look gangly and they're not the most filled out, or their hands are too big, which some people are turned on by big hands, but there are such a thing as too big of hands. I have small hands, very fish. But yeah, so what I was trying to get at with all this, though, is that when I was younger and when I was coming up, there was no incentive to be trans like there is now. So when people tell me that trans people aren't a real thing, or that nobody has gender dysphoria to a point where they actually have to do anything about it, people should just get therapy. I understand if, as a society, we're trying to eventually move towards that, and not for the erasure of trans people, which I'm tired of everybody with erasure that way anyway. Because if you're so worried about your group being erased, if you're worried about erasure as far as your group goes, why don't you just be an exceptional person, and then you don't have to worry about erasure? Then you personally don't have to worry about erasure. Because I'll tell you the truth about me. I don't care about my group at all. Like, my group, when it comes to LGBT, as far as I'm concerned, as much as people have messed up that movement, that can be erased. But I, as an individual, will make my mark, and people will remember me. So I'm not worried about a group's erasure when I, as a person, know that I'm exceptional enough that, even though it's taking me a minute, which is partly because the industry worked the way it did for so long, and I'm not blaming, but I will give you guys a reason when it comes to that kind of thing, was for a long time when I was coming up in this, as far as entertainment goes, you really did have to wait for somebody to actually pick you. Like, then you were literally a pick me. Now everybody calls us pick me's, but you literally were a pick me because you were waiting for Hollywood to cast you in something. You had to wait for bookers to be interested in you. You had to hope somebody from the clubs or a big agency liked your stand-up. And that's the way that you would actually get anywhere in show business. But now, through YouTube and social media, you can make your own mark and figure out your own market and get your own audience and build your own thing. And so I don't really worry about the things people worry about when it comes to, you know, like my group being erased. I'm busy doing my own thing, and I'm going to make my own thing happen. But, you know, sometimes people will tell me when it comes to the trans thing that there are no trans people that suffer from gender dysphoria to a point where they actually do have to transition. And I know that not to be true because there was no benefit to it when I was coming up. Like, I knew trans women that had come from really good families, you know, where their families did have a lot of money, and they were in the middle. I had one friend that was on her way to being a lawyer. So, and it was before she was transitioning, obviously, but he, at that time, was on his way to being a lawyer. And it just was such a thing for him. Her, by the time I met her, it turned out to be an absolutely beautiful trans woman. Michelle was her name. And, but, you know, she had to quit her whole life, basically, and ended up, like, being an SW, which if you guys aren't familiar with SW, um, figure it out. I told you guys before, I was one for a long time. I just don't want to get this demonetized or whatever, and I have to be careful because I am on live. But she was an SW, and she completely lost contact with her family, and that's what used to happen back in the day. Was these girls, would like have to leave their whole families and then fend for themselves, and go through, because at the time it was a lot harder to get gender affirming care. So as far as hormones and stuff like that, so you would take trips to Mexico. They would take trips to Tijuana, because we were in Vegas, and then also when I was in Phoenix, and so they would have to drive there. They'd go to the pharmacy. They or one of the girls would go to a pharmacy, buy as much stuff as the pharmacy would let them buy, and then they'd come back and they'd sell it to the other girls, and that's the way a lot of people were getting their hormones at that time, and that was before Google, and so they just had to do it word of mouth and take their chances. And then when it came to, and when it comes to like autogynephile, which I've talked about as well, like I didn't know a lot of girls that were dealing with that back then, where it was just a fetish where they thought that they were attracted to themselves as women. That's what an autogynephile is, if you guys aren't familiar. But yeah, they weren't doing it for that either. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just so turned on by myself as a woman. And so, but part of my point is I don't have to know why it is people's brains work the way that they work. All I know is I catch up with people wherever I catch up with them in life. And that's where I just drop any judgment that I would otherwise, I guess, have. But at this point, I have to tell you guys, and this isn't me trying to make myself sound like a saint or anything. I think it's just because I've been so open to life for so many years now, and so open to people living the way that they've lived. I don't know if I told you guys, but one time I hung out with a homeless guy for a night. It was when I was stuck in Tucson. I was pretty young, I think I was still under 21 at that time, and in the clubs on a fake ID. And we'd gone to Tucson, and I got in an argument with my friend that had driven us out there. And, I was stuck. And Tucson is an hour and a half away from Phoenix, which feels like forever when you're stuck, when you have no car. Your friend that you rode out there with left you because they got mad at you because they were a hater, is really why they got mad at me. Because I was super fun. Thank you. Ty, did you feel your trans friends back in the day had mental illness or were just born that way? I think, and thank you for the super thanks. I think it's both, really. And I think they would have told you that too. Like, well, not both. Definitely there is, well, you're born mentally ill, right? Like, that's not, like, sometimes things develop later on, I guess, or you can be hit. Like, I know some people have, like, through THC or things like that, have found themselves dealing with schizophrenia, but I don't know if they were born that way and then it just triggered, or the way that works specifically. But yeah, my friends would have told you that they definitely were dealing with mental illness. And Buck Angel talks about that and says it's mental illness. I guess maybe my point with a lot of this, which I'm glad you asked because it makes me actually think about this in a more substantive way and not in a defensive way, because that's the other thing. Like, people ask me things in a very, like, argumentative way sometimes, and then of course I'm going to give like an argumentative answer back. But if you ask me these questions in a serious way, then I like the way that it makes me actually think about this. And I think a lot of my point with all of this is I think that we should all stay kind of open to letting people develop and figure out what it is. And then we'll have a better understanding of it. Because a lot of transsexual people have spent a lot of their lives with their backs against the wall, with people constantly attacking them. and I mean transsexual people and from my generation, because now participation trophies, so I get that. And that too is a deterrent in figuring out what's actually going on with people. Because if you're constantly praising them for just being what they are, just being, the way that they identify, then I don't think you get a good gauge of them. Uh, I love you too, Outlaw Feminist, and thank you. I appreciate that. I definitely do appreciate that. Super thanks. Um, but yeah, I really do feel like, that's how we'll be able to get answers, and that's how we'll be able to save kids and even save adults from, mutilating themselves in certain cases. Because whether it's nature or nurture, whether it happens when you're born or you develop into it, whatever it is, there are some people that definitely do just end up being transsexual. So, however we arrive there, that's where we're at some point. And but if we could have honest conversations with them, or they felt like they could be open, even with mental health professionals, or people that are actually studying the way that all works out, and they didn't feel like they had to be on the defensive about it, I think that maybe we could get some real answers as far as that goes, and see what it is that's actually making it happen, if it's something that's making it happen, and also figure out how we could, have healthier trans adults. And, if it's a thing where, like, it develops when you're young, then nurturing them in the way of non-therapeutic at all, nothing, or non-medical, I should say, at all, but like, therapy and stuff like that, or like giving them somebody to talk to, that kind of thing. Um, then I feel like, like outside of that, like you just leave people alone and let them grow. Because that's the other thing, like starting kids on, like, I've talked about this before on episodes or whatever, not this, but, and the Texas comedy scene really isn't booming like that. So the person that asked me that, like, one day I'll make an episode, a full episode about what's going on specifically in Austin, but it's really not as great as people make it sound. And I say that as somebody that's in Austin. And when I was out there, I was really out there. Like, I know the comedy scene, and nobody can tell me I don't. No actual comic would say that I wasn't really out there. I was a mothership regular. I know what the Texas, and specifically Austin, comedy scene really is. One city you might want to watch, though, is San Antonio. San Antonio might be coming up at some point because they're like Austin's little sister or whatever. And I feel like they want to make a play for it out in Austin. And because it is just a tad more rural, that's a great question, Vinny. You got $5 on you? Yeah, actually, I should just be like, you should just ask me that with the super things. Will you shut up, Wakanda Lisa? Wakanda Lisa Rice? Child, ain't nobody checking for San Antonio. I'm saying in the comedy way, I think that more of those comics, because the thing you forget is because San Antonio is only an hour away from Austin, if you consider Austin to be like a fertile comedy ground, it's close enough that the San Antonio comedians can come over here and work out at the open mics. And so that is love you too. I'm being silly right now. It's just the way you said, girl, child, ain't nobody checking for. I get it. I mean, I read things a lot of times in like the voice that I think you guys would have. But anyway, what I was trying to get at with all of this is these groups, right? They always get mad at me. There's always going to be some group that gets mad at me because I'm not saying things exactly the way that they want me to say them. And I tell people every once in a while, and I've more recently posted this on X, I've been like, hey, if you want a creator to say something exactly the way you want it said, then you create content. Because that's what I do. I watched content for a long time, and not just on YouTube or whatever, but content in general, and even mainstream TV, stuff like that. Um, and my thing with all of it was I was like, there's nobody saying the stuff that I actually would like to hear or saying the stuff that I actually think needs to be said. So that's when I decided to really start amping up my channel. Like for a long time, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my channel. So it was just constant current events, and it would be anything. It would be news, and that was great because I learned a lot about editing. That's when I was still using iMovie, and but iMovie now I use. Let's see. Hi Ty, I would like to say the people in the 90s, fetishes ain't new in the 90s though. We made them stay in their freaking lane. Yeah, Damien, you're not wrong about that. Like that's something that we can talk about just really quick. Um This is so stupid. Back when I was in Vegas, we had this like drag queen that I think was trying to be trans, and at some point had tried to like end it, and they tried to end it by like giving themselves like a scarf, I'll say. And so we all called her Cutthroat. And she looked like a rough sailor type or whatever. But she was definitely like would fall in the autogynephile category. And so we did have those, but you're right. They did keep it to their actual lane, which if you're going to be a fetishist in a gay bar, to me that's completely appropriate. That's a good place for it because a lot of people do go to gay bars just to hook up or, that kind of thing. And so it really, I don't see anything wrong with living out your fetishes in a gay bar. If you're trying to take it out into the streets like people are now and trying to access women's spaces, knowing good and well that you're not at all attempting to be a woman or don't feel like a woman or think you're a woman. You really are just living out your fetish and forcing everybody else to go along with it. That I definitely do not agree with. But when it comes to the fetishes being at the bars like that, I see nothing wrong with that. A lot of people live out their sexy in the gay bars and in the straight bars too, actually. So I don't have anything. I don't have any problem with people being ridiculous like that. But like I was saying, what I wanted to wrap up before I move on, was just when it comes to the trans thing, like I said, back in the day, there was absolutely no benefit to it at all. It really was where you were ostracized from society, your family didn't want to talk to you. And then, even going out in the street, no matter how beautiful a trans woman is, you're usually going to be able to tell that as a trans woman. There's always going to be a way that you can tell. There are some that are completely passable, but usually you're going to be able to tell on some level. So they also had to deal with everyday society's ire. And when I was hanging out with the girls all the time, I was with them all the time. And it was relentless, where at least once a day, we knew it was going to happen, and it would be while you're at Walmart or while you're at Walgreens. Or there was a lot of walls in my life back in those days, or just the mall, and somebody would say something, or you'd be getting late night food, and you're just completely not in that mode where you want to deal with the rest of the world or have people like coming for you. And it would just happen. And so there was no benefit, and I wouldn't imagine that anybody would have put themselves through that for any reason other than they just really felt it. Same with gay. Now you get rewarded for being gay, but when I came out, there was really a lot of consequences. Like I remember the day I came out. National Coming Out Day just happened, but I remember when I was coming out. And I was taught, like, I couldn't, I literally, my stomach was literally in knots. So I really couldn't eat. And it was several days when I, like, because, I had started to go to the gay bars. And then once I started going to the gay bars, um, I felt like I was being so dishonest because I would sneak to the gay bars. And then, the first gay bar I went to was a gay bar in Phoenix that a lot of people know, um, or knew back in the day. It was legendary because it was our gay bar, and it was called Preston's. And I remember I would sometimes get like a matchbook from Preston's because I smoke cigarettes. I've always smoked cigarettes since I was like 13 years old. And so I remember that I would have like a matchbook that said Preston's on it. And I was so nervous that my family would know what Preston's was that I would, like, if I had a matchbook, I just remember this one particular time I had a matchbook and excuse me, I threw it out of my car window, like at least 3 or 4 blocks away from my house, which I know I shouldn't be littering, but this was the 90s. Things were wild, you guys. And so I threw it out the window of my car, and then I was paranoid that somehow from 3 or 4 blocks away that it would end up blowing to my house and my family would know that it was my matchbook. This is how paranoid I started to get. I just had such a guilty conscience from or about being gay and about keeping this secret. And so I made it my plan that I was going to come out to my parents. I was going to tell my mother first, and then she could tell my dad. I was going to have her tell my dad, which is what I did. I executed that plan. But, I decided that I was going to do it very soon. And so I was just rolling over and couldn't sit still and really couldn't eat. And it was a terrible, terrible time just because I was like, maybe my family will never talk to me again. Maybe they all will have, not, or I'll get kicked out and then I don't know where I'm going to live or what I'm going to do. And so, yeah, and then I did have a rough time with my family understanding it at first, and then we worked past that. But there was definitely a rough period where, everybody needed to adjust, and I needed to adjust to being gay too, because, at that time I was like, when you come out, that's why I do understand some people being like, when it comes to young people and them doing stupid things like Queers for Palestine, or a lot of the like dumb thing, even like BLM, which like I've always told people I agree with the sentiment Black Lives Matter, but as far as the group Black Lives Matter, the misappropriation of funds, if you want to put it politely, some would call it embezzlement, and the fact that I saw from the beginning how corrupt that was, and that one guy, Sean, whatever his name is, um, what was it? What was his name? Sean something. They called him Talcum X because he was the white Black Lives Matter leader, which, he's half white or whatever. He's mixed, but he definitely does look more white than anything else. But yeah, when it came to that whole situation, or Sean King, yep, that's his name. And so when it, like with that whole thing, when kids get caught up in all that shit, I definitely do. No, it's not Sean Combs. Shut up. Sean Combs is Puff Daddy, and he's in a lot of trouble right now. I don't even think I can really talk about him because I'll get demonetized. I don't think there's any way I could talk about Puffy in a way without getting demonetized right now, because he's done so many things wrong at this point that it's just like, all right, well, that's kind of, but, somebody said Puffy is probably an AGP in secret. You're probably not wrong. There's not I don't think there's much we could find out at this point about Puffy that wouldn't surprise us. I think with everything, what's up, David T? Good seeing you. But I think with everything that we've found out so far, it's just kind of like, yeah, nothing is gonna really, nothing's gonna make me be like, no, Puffy would never do that. It's like, okay, that especially those latest charges, and who knew Puffy would have a thing for white boys? It looks like that's what it is, huh, you guys? Like, there have been a few white boys that have come out, and he likes playing that. Blair White, if Blair White had a Puffy story, that would make me laugh. Thank you, Lupa. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you watching my content. I've got to edit after I do this. I'm going to be up all night editing, but I didn't wake up till just a couple hours ago, so I'm not going to act like that. Yeah, Bieber, poor Bieber. They said he went into hiding, which I don't blame him. Poor kid, like a lot of these people, they really don't understand that. You know what? We will talk about this really quick, and not specifically Puffy, but at the same time, Puffy. Like, I'm really tired of people acting like, and I don't mean like, everyday people or people that aren't part of the industry. But I really am tired of industry people acting like any of this is a surprise. And not only that any of it is a surprise, but that, like, a lot of them knew, they just turn a blind eye to it. Because if we're being 100% honest, that's something that you just have to do if you're going to be in Hollywood. And I will tell you guys, like, when it comes to me, I am a leave the party early person. And I have always let people know that. I let the people that throw parties know that I leave early. And the reason that I let people know that, and I tell them this in so many words, because I've been invited to things where I'm like, I know that there's going to be stuff there that I don't want to see and I don't need to see. And so I tell these people, because you guys remember, I told you I stopped drinking a long time ago, and I really don't do anything else. And so if you're not drinking and you're not doing anything else, that means you're sober. And I tell people all the time, I am not going to your event because after a certain hour, I'm just a witness. And I don't want to be a witness. But there are situations of stories that people will tell you about where people have put hands on other people. There are stories where people get their drinks mickeyed. There are people, and these are all stories that a lot of us know. And these are Comedy World specific stories. But since I haven't personally witnessed some of this stuff, even though we all know it happens, I can't actually give names because I can't stand behind it and say that I actually saw it happen with my own eyes. But you know somebody that has seen it happen with their own eyes or knows the victim in the situation, but nobody will ever talk about it because they'll be ostracized. And people, whoever Panic Studios, the old Vulcan drug, yup, you get, I'm telling you, people know. I'm glad you said that because unprompted, yes. And that happened at Creek not too long ago too. And I was there for that one, but I didn't see who did it, obviously. I just saw the result of a person. They had to call the ambulance. Literally, they had to call the paramedics. And then luckily it ended up passing, but they literally had to call the paramedics because they just all of a sudden, and they knew it wasn't right. So it was like, okay, call the paramedics. But yeah, so people know these things are happening, but it's like, and then you're a person like me that's no longer a part of that situation, and people say that I'm being a hater. So even if I were to say everything that I know and let people like piece it together, or maybe empower victims to come out and say what they've actually had happen to them or that kind of thing, um, why should I do that when everybody's just going to call me a hater anyway, and I'm not going to get any support, and how does that serve me other than being a good Samaritan for people that will, in a lot of cases, never come out on their own? And so that's why the Diddy situation went on for as long as it did, because he's, a celebrity on another level. Because, a lot of the people that I know are very rich, they have a lot of money, but they're not a P. Diddy level celebrity. Um, so, there's less consequence, but there's still enough consequence on the local comedy scene. Yeah, I performed in Cleveland. Um, but there's enough consequence on the local comedy scene or on the local scene that nobody's going to come out and say anything, So when it comes to, let's see. I wish people would stop calling him his stage name and start just referring to him as. Yeah, well, I'm not trying to get demonetized on YouTube, so what's the saying? You can put one in one hand and shit in the other and see which one feels. Which, I'm not trying to be shady with you, but just, people all the time are like, I wish you would say this, or I wish you would talk about this, and it's like, yeah, well, I wish I had the freedom to say everything exactly the way that I want to say it. Because if you guys think that I'm crazy now sometimes with some of the stuff, could you imagine me if I didn't have the threat of being demonetized? Or, if I could just say everything the way that I wanted to say it, I would definitely say everything the way that I wanted to say it. But there's lawsuits that could happen. There's demonetization. My Twitter is at Ty Rivera. It's that simple. Love you too, by the way, Damien. I do appreciate it. And I just have fun when I say stuff like that. Like, sometimes people think I'm being mean. I don't think I performed in Iowa, and I'm probably not your dad, but no promises. The 90s were wild. Just, they weren't that wild. Yeah, but like maybe the early 90s was when I had my run where I was, with the girls. It's so disgusting. I mean, like, girls are disgusting, but like me being a lesbian for years. Which, I'm not trying to throw anybody off. I know people think I'm trans when I say that kind of stuff. I'm not. But I am just gay enough that anything I do is going to be gay at this point. So if I were to by chance hook up with a woman, that would be a lesbian experience for her. Because that's how gay I am, is I can turn anything gay. You may look at it as heterosexual, but trust me, if I'm in it, I'm gay. But yeah, when I was younger, I messed around with a couple girls. Um, now, because I'm almost done here. If anybody has any questions, you guys can hit me with those, and you don't have to do a super thanks. We'll just do some questions for a little bit. I'll chat in the interim while I wait for if anybody has questions. But if you guys have any questions, ask me whatever you want. Let me see. Low watermark, you're always great. I appreciate you. Great to see you live streaming. I really like how you don't try to sanitize the past when you talk about the things you've seen. Too many people want to pretend the past was totally clean and pure. I appreciate that. And yeah, no, I would never try to lie to anybody and act like my past has been wild, you know? And like sometimes people joke with me, which I know they're not being serious, but sometimes people do joke with me and they'll say things like, you should run for president, and I know it's just a nice thing to say, but I always tell people honestly, believe me, nobody needs to hear all the stuff that all the stuff people would come out with and be like, I'm drunk. It was a mess. Ty, as a lesbian from the 90s, I get it. It's just called being queer today. Being queer sucks. I am not a fan of the queer community, but I get you. Yeah, I'm not a fan of queer. I messed around with a couple girls too, and it was fun. I like to say I am the only kind of gay. I'm only kind of gay. Yeah, I'm all the way gay. It's disgusting. A funny story with my sisters. One, and I'll only tell you this story. I'm glad you asked that. I figured everything out on my own when it comes to stand-up. Give me a second, you guys, because I want to answer this story I told not too long ago. And my sister, she's passed away, and we're coming up to the anniversary of it. She died October 31st. And I feel like if she was alive, she would get mad at me for telling this story. But since she's not, I feel like if she's watching from heaven, she'll get a laugh at this story. Because my sister was just a couple years older than me. Like, I think she was 3 years older than me. I'm terrible about those things. I think she was 3 years older than me for most of the year. And then for 1 month out of the year, we were 2 years apart. I think that's the way it worked. But I know there was that gap month where we would be like, 1 year closer than we were. And so she was great. She was my best friend. But she was also shady. You know how kids are with each other. Kids like to sabotage each other. So one Christmas, which I told you guys before, my parents would give us these great Christmases, right? And so one Christmas, we all got bikes. But since my sisters were girls, and when I was growing up, nobody cared about gendered, nobody would ever be like, oh, you bought the girls something different than you bought the boys. That's just the way it worked when I was growing up. And so what happened was we all got bikes, but then my sisters, because they were girls, they each got a pair of skates. And they were these really cute Disneyland skates. They had Mickey and Minnie on them. And so what happened was, it was one of the bikes where instead of, because it was a BMX, and so instead of having the brakes like this, it was one where you put your foot backwards, and then that's how the brake works on the bikes. And so what happened was, my stupid sister knew that I did not know how to work the brakes on that bike. And I asked her to help me. This is when we were super young, super young. And I didn't know how to work the brakes on that bike. And she was impatient and was just kind of like a you'll figure it out type of attitude. So she's on the drive, we're on the driveway, which is obviously sloped, it goes down. And she tells me to push off on the bike. And so I push off on the bike. She's just getting used to her skates. And so she rolls in front of me as I'm still kind of a distance away coming down the driveway, And I knew I needed to stop. I was little and I was scared, and I knew I needed to stop, but I couldn't figure out how to stop. And my brain couldn't register that I just needed to put my feet back and then it would stop. And so what happened was, she was getting used to her skates and she ended up falling. So she ended up falling, what in my mind is like slow motion, just bam, falls like that. And so I'm out of control on my way down. And I remember like literally yelling, like I was like, ah, you know, as I'm riding down the driveway. And so in my head, I don't want to hurt her. I know that I can't hurt her. And I'm thinking if I roll over her back, I'm going to hurt her. If I roll over her legs, I'm going to hurt her. You know, head obviously out, whatever. So my thing is, I might as well just run over her ass. You know, like that's the safest way to do this is to run over her ass. And I still remember to this day the feeling of like, I just, I rolled over her perfectly. And she ended up going inside crying to tell on me like I had done it on purpose. But the reason that she was mad at me and the reason that she was so broken up about it was there was this neighbor that was an older guy, obviously, you know, but not old, like creepy old, like, you know, 20 something or whatever. But we were young kids and, you know, little girls get crushes or whatever. And my sister had a crush on him. And so he apparently was looking out the window. Like she looked and saw him looking out the window when I was riding over her ass. Like literally at that moment she noticed. And it just embarrassed her to a different degree. And so then I got in extra trouble because she cried about it. But that's the real reason she was crying. And if she had told my dad that she was being a creep and really she was crying because she liked the neighbor, Jim, and he had seen her get her ass run over, I'm sure he wouldn't have been too proud of her either. But instead, I ended up getting in trouble. But anyway, did I miss any questions or does anybody have any questions? If you have any questions, I will answer them and then I will get out of here. Let's see. Kim Gomez, you split the clam. How dare you? Rumble just doesn't get enough traffic for me right now, and I'm so tired of trying to upload different places. It's exhausting, especially after all the editing that I have to do. Like I said, tonight I'm going to be up all night editing for sure. Straight old married white lady mama here, and I love this channel because you're honest and real. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. Beetle Dom. And then we got, let's see, super thanks that I gotta get to. Good night to whoever just said good night. Damien, I think, just said good night. And then let's see. Kitty and Lou. I'm broke, but I wanted to say needed this tonight. And yes, LA is straight disturbing now. 6 to 10 year waiting list for homeless mothers. Love you. I really appreciate the super thanks or super chat. And yeah, LA is, you know what? I'm going to be honest. Do you write your material down first or just work it out on stage? I usually just work it out on stage to see if it's funny. And then if it's funny, then I'll like actually, and I'm having trouble with the wording because, you know, sometimes something's funny, but you just can't figure out the wording. Then I'll actually write it down on paper. But usually I'll just like try it the first time on stage and then work it. And then it'll develop into what it develops in. So it's kind of a combination of the two. I need to do more pen and paper writing. Eric just got a new job, so looking forward to getting a membership. Thank you, Indigenous Exotical. I'm glad I was able to keep you company. Thank you, Vinny. And thank you, Freebird. I appreciate that. I do. I'm glad you enjoy my channel. I don't know if Paige Irene is still in the chat. Paige Irene, if you're in the chat, I wanted to say this earlier when I saw your name come up, and I'll send you a message on Instagram as well. But thank you very much. I did get the beanies and I got the because Paige Irene made me like 2 knitted caps, like beanies, and then she sent me some little face scrubbies and a washcloth. And you know what? I'm gonna be ghetto for just a quick second because I really did enjoy this. And I'll end up clipping this part out and then posting it separately just to, excuse me, actually do a proper thank you. But see, these are the little face scrubbies. And so, like, when I'm washing my face, and then this is the washcloth. And it's just really, really nice and really thoughtful of her to actually send it to me. And then these koozies for, like, and they're red, white, and blue for election season. So when Donald Trump is getting robbed again, I can get drunk. I have my koozie and can be like, I'm drinking beer again, you guys. I told you I was done drinking, but I lied. Okay, sorry I missed your question, Alan R. Let me see. I'm so sorry about that. I didn't mean to at all. I would not do that on purpose. Let me see. What was your question? Did you send a super thanks with your question, or is that your first super thanks that you're sending? Because if you can send it, not send money again, I'm not saying that, but if you can just send the question again so I can be refreshed, because I'm not sure where it is, and there have been a few chats. Beetle Mom, do you post anywhere when you will be on stage in comedy? Right now, no, because I'm doing a lot of, like when I do shows, I'm not doing many live performances at all. But when I do shows, yeah, don't worry about it, Alan. You don't have to send a super thanks. Just send the question if you can again, and then I'll answer it. No, because right now I do a lot of other people's shows when I'm actually performing, and I don't usually know I'm going to perform until last minute. Like last week, I did shows for Leonardo. I did 4 shows. I did 2 in San Antonio and 1 in here in Austin. No, 2 in Austin and 2 in San Antonio. That's the way it worked. And I did them for Leonardo and her fiance, Quinn Dale. And it was like last minute, and I had no idea. My hair's messed up, but I'll show you guys these 2. This is Paige Irene, which, Alan, if you sent your question, I'm going to check in a minute. But see, then I can give cute winter vibes. Maybe with a face full of makeup. This would be better. But yeah, I do appreciate it very much. I always like when people have a skill. Okay, so let me see. Let me see if I can find. Yeah, so long story short, I don't really post where I'm going to be. Paige Irene, I'll see, and on the next episode, Vinny, I'll let you guys know if Paige has a place that she would actually be selling them. Because I know she sells them, but I didn't ask her where or anything like that. Asked about stopping drinking. He asked if you were in AA. I'm not currently in AA. I just don't like drinking anymore. My body just stopped liking it. Weight loss. Eleanor lost a lot of weight, but now he's starting to drink more. His question was, what do you think? That's part of why I quit drinking. I quit drinking because at a point I lost a bunch of weight, and I was still drinking like I was drinking before I lost the weight. And it would literally just soak my body with alcohol. And I ended up being I remember one time I literally, and I'm not proud of this story, but I got so drunk that I literally fell asleep on a street. Like I passed out on a street in Atlanta. And thankfully, I woke up and still had my wallet and everything, which I'm not saying because it was Atlanta. I know what you guys are going to go with that, and you're worried about black people. No, I would not want to fall asleep in the street of any city. Austin, especially, I wouldn't want to fall asleep on 6th Street. But yeah, it was in the party area of Atlanta, and I drank so much that I literally passed out on the street or on the sidewalk, and luckily woke up and everything was okay. But that was scary. That night I remember being scary because then I was in the rental car and I wanted to drive myself home, and I knew I wasn't ready to drive myself home, but I didn't know where I could park it. It was that's one of the yeah, that was one of the last. And so what I would say, honestly, Alan, if you feel like you're drinking more and you don't like that, then you should probably join a 12-step program, which I'm not telling anybody what to do with themselves. But one thing I did like, and especially if you plan to be sober or you feel like your drinking is becoming a problem, one thing I did like I said, was, it sucked that everybody stopped talking to me because I really did like that camaraderie that did come with the 12-step program, which, mine specifically was AA, but there's NA, there's OA. Um, you want to be sober. Yeah, well, definitely be sober. Like, you'll replace everything that you lose from not drinking because, maybe you have your friends down at the local bar, or, people you drink with or whatever. Those people are usually good when they fall away. Like, I didn't mind losing my drinking friends at all. It was just like, yeah, I don't care about any of that. Not to be callous or whatever, but I just, the people that were meant to be my friends and stay in my life definitely did stay in my life. But I didn't miss losing the drinking friends, and now I see them because, sometimes I go back to Phoenix, and it's not like I only drank in Phoenix, but that's really where I did like my real partying. A lot of it was in Phoenix. Then Vegas, very transient. So those people were going to eventually move on anyway. So I don't think about them. But in Phoenix, I'll go home and I'll see the same people at the same bars and wearing the same clothes. And I don't even mean that jokingly. I look at people that I knew in the 90s, or, because my real drinking was like late 90s, early 2000s, till about 2014, but it was on and off. I wasn't just drinking the whole time. But yeah, I'll see people and literally from the late 90s, early 2000s, and be like, I remember that shirt. And it's like, should I be remembering the shirt that you were wearing in the early 2000s and late 90s? Does that not tell me a little bit that probably your life hasn't moved on? And to tell the truth, that wasn't a nice shirt in the 90s or early 2000s. So I don't even know why you still have that shirt. Um, I feel like it makes one more creative. The alcohol makes you more creative, you feel like? Because I feel like I work best when I'm sober. I really do feel like that. I think that maybe you think that those things make you more creative, but I think if you were to be sober and actually let yourself. You know what, David Teague? I think we all have a Tommy Hilfiger shirt that we miss from back in those days. Tommy Hilfiger, and I mean that seriously. I had this Tommy Hilfiger shirt that was the best. But yeah, Alan, what I was trying to say is, if you stop drinking, there will be a minute where you feel kind of stagnant or your brain has to reacclimate. But once you get through that, you'll feel like you're more creative than you thought you were when you were drunk. And that's one thing that I do stand by. Like, that's one thing that really has been great for me, is I like being more clear-headed, and I look at it sort of like, like I have antennas in my head, or like a satellite dish, or however you want to put it, but something that like actually attracts the ideas or whatever. And when I drink or I smoke something, because I only smoke the wacky tobacco once in a while, but even that will slow my brain down and not let me be as creative as I could possibly be. It's kind of like it clouds up the signals. That's the way I see it. And so I do like being sober for the creative parts. No bullshit. And if I felt different, I'd be like, yeah, I wish I was still drinking again. Well, technically, if I felt different, I'd be drinking. Um, Let me see if I missed anything. I still have a Tommy. You know, you're lucky. I have a Tommy Hilfiger shirt too, but I don't wear it because it's for special occasions. Yeah, Panic Studio, I get that. Um, Let me see. Thank you, Cognitive Dissonant. I'm glad you enjoy my videos. I've got one that I'm gonna put out tomorrow, but I need to edit it tonight, so I'm gonna get out of here now. I hope I didn't miss anything. Um, Alan, you're a musician and artist, so you don't have drinking friends. Yeah, you'll be more creative. I have faith. Yes, Rivera. I hope things are going well for you, Rivera. I don't know if you're back in what's it called or not. But um and I'm scrolling just to see that I didn't miss anything. Yes, Ravella, I am definitely an empath. I've talked about that. I'm super good night, Stace. I appreciate it. Um okay, so I've scrolled to the bottom. This is what I'll tell you guys really quick about me being an empath. Yes, I am an empath, and I also am very emotionally intelligent, which is the only way I'm intelligent. The rest of the ways I'm a dummy. But that's part of the reason that I spend so much time by myself is because I really do feel people's energy, and it really does weigh on me a lot. And I don't like a lot of what I'm feeling when I'm out in the world lately off of people. And so I do stay away from people because of that, because I'm lately a little bit too tuned into other people when I'm around them and too sensitive. And so I don't like being around people. I'm a true empath, but also you're an empath as well. So you know that not only does that work in the sensitive way where like you can feel people and you can be sensitive to them, I also know exactly how to be mean to people. And that's the other thing with being emotionally intelligent. Like people mistake that for being like, oh, I'm just sensitive all the time. No, I know how to hurt your feelings. And that's why I will stay away from a lot of people. Because, I don't want to do either. I don't want to have to coddle people, and I also don't want to have to hurt anybody's feelings. So it's better if I just hang out alone and create and, work on my YouTube channel. When I get 100,000 subscribers, when I get to 100,000 subscribers, then I'll start actively touring again. David Teague, thank you very much. I really do appreciate the super thanks. And yeah, everybody, it's time for me to get out of here. So I don't think I missed anything. That's okay, Ty. I'll be back, not to brag, but was my high school valedictorian. And so far, got 2 degrees in the last 3 years. Congratulations, Vinny. That's amazing. Rachel Ray, good seeing you last week. Rachel Ray got to see me. Molly McGee, I've learned so much from your comedy instructional videos. I think they really helped a lot. I'm glad to hear that. I may end up at some point doing a few more. I thought about doing a Comedy Tip Tuesday just recently. So thank you, everybody. I really do appreciate all of you tuning in for this first live episode of Unbothered. I might continue to do these. We'll see what it ends up being like. I don't know what I'm doing week to week. I love all of you. I appreciate all of you. And I will see you when I see you.